What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Behind the Curtain. Today, we are talking about big whys, big goals, what a big why is, and how we're going to use them to further our business. So let's start off. What's going on, Scott? How you doing, brother?
I am doing good, man, and I hope everyone's okay with us kind of taking a little bit of a tangent off of our normal, real estate heavy conversations. But I think this really ties back to I just got back from family reunion. I know that you were watching from home, and there were some really great sessions and a big theme on finding purpose in what you're doing and seeking out that big why. So we thought it was perfect timing to jump into that conversation. So Pete, let's go super simple explanation. What is a big why?
Yeah, so you hear it a lot, like in the entrepreneurial and business space, like what is your why, right? And it's true, really, for anything in life. Is what like drives you to do things better, right? Like what gets you out of bed in the morning. If you're in a sales job, what motivates you to pull through the pain of, look, nobody likes picking up calls and picking up the phone and cold calling and knocking on doors, but we know it's vital to find the people that we can help. So what is it that helps pull you through that pain? And it has to be big enough to really make you feel like getting through it.
Yeah, and I also like the explanation of, like, again, just kind of finding that thing that if you didn't have to work to provide a living for yourself and your family, what would you be doing with your time, right? And I know, like, we've talked about it a little bit. Like, I used to think my big why was like, I want to retire by 40 and go sit on a beach somewhere. And yet I realized, like, I don't know if that has enough like purpose behind it. It would be pretty fun for a little while to sit on the beach and have nothing to do, but that gets old after a while. So, like, trying to think about what is it that I would be doing if I put myself in that position where I could choose. Do I want to go sit on a beach, or do I have something else that I could be doing with my life beyond just working every day?
Yeah. So, and we've talked, I mean, Family Reunion was huge. And just for anyone who doesn't know, Family Reunion is a real estate conference. It's actually like the biggest real estate conference in the industry. And I've heard like, what's your why? What's your why? And I've always had a really hard time kind of figuring it out. Right. But something that Gary Keller talked about was like, he kind of changed the way of saying it from what's your why to what's your purpose. And you just kind of alluded to it. And I think like the key word there that you just used is choose to do, right? Like, I think we all want to get to a certain point, or would dream about getting to a certain point of like, money doesn't matter. I don't have to work. Like, I get to literally wake up and choose what I want to do with my day. And that's like the ultimate dream. But the idea is like, what beyond that, when you do get to choose, would you do? And that's what pulls you to be able to accomplish that financial freedom and that choice. So, yeah, I think it's really worth thinking about. And there's some different ways that you can kind of think about it and kind of help you get there.
Yeah. So how would you recommend going about finding your big why?
So a big epiphany or aha I had this past weekend is like it all starts with like believing that you can achieve that, right? That you have to believe that you can get to that point where you can do it, right? Because what I found was when I would think about really, really big whys and really big purposes, I found myself second guessing myself and saying, come on, man, you got to be realistic. Like that would never happen. And from seeing all these inspirational people on stage and just realizing that they're really no different than you and I or anybody who's watching this call, like, dude, you can do it. Like you can get to that point. And once I kind of started thinking it from that lens, I was like, okay, now my purpose is starting to become more and more clear to me.
Yeah, and I think there was so I don't know, this quote always gets attributed to Bill Gates, but I think a lot of there's been a few very influential people out there that have said something similar, which is that people often overestimate what can be done in their life in a year and underestimate what can be done in 5 years. And so for me thinking about that, I just kind of reflected on the idea that it's about kind of looking at the timeline, right? You might not be able to do certain things in a year, and that is okay to like realize like this just isn't possible. But when you stretch that timeline out, you can do some really big things, and you're never more than 5 years away from completely changing your life. So that's kind of my aha.
Yeah, and man, I want to show some gratitude to you on that because, coming from a smaller like mom and pop brokerage, and like you helped bridge that gap to Keller Williams, which really helps you think about that, right? And it's all about working backwards, right? And you helped me to learn to think, okay, if this is what do I want to accomplish, set the time frame and then work backwards from there. Because we all think, well, we got to get this big thing done, but it always comes down into smaller increments. So big credit, and I tell you this, off camera, but I super appreciate that because I think it's a gift when your mindset shifts and you start to say, okay, anything is possible with a plan.
Thanks, man. And I appreciate that because that is like tied into my big why is, helping people. And one of the things that, just to go back for a second to like, how do you go about finding your big why? I like to recommend people kind of think back to, we don't want to go like psychoanalysis here, but
let's do it. I'll do it. Let's go on.
To sit at the therapist, right? And they're talking about, oh, this is because in your childhood this happened. But I think there's a lot that we can learn about like who we were in our younger years and like some of the things that influenced us. And then if we kind of walk our way through life and look for some of those patterns that have shown up, like things that have mattered to you over a long course of time, characteristic like traits about yourself that haven't really changed over time, like that's who you are at your core. And that's, to me, a good place to start searching for your big why.
Well, yeah, right. Because it can't just be like, oh, I want to drive a Ferrari or I want to have a, huge mansion and live on the beach or whatever. Because yeah, that's good, right? There was also a speaker who was talking about happiness, right? And it's like, and I'm sure everybody who's listening and you and I can relate to, it's like you set a goal, you achieve it, and then it's like, what's next, right? You set a number goal, you set an income goal, you set and then it's okay. So what's next? So you kind of lose track of that happiness. But like, if your big why is something, in my opinion, maybe I'm wrong, everybody has an emotional connection to different things, but it has to be huge. It has to be something that connects to you emotionally. If it's just a monetary goal, that's not really going to be fulfilling when you actually reach it, right? The slogan is money is good for what money can do, something along those lines. So,
Yep.
And it's true.
Yeah, and that was Sean Achor who wrote the book, The Happiness Advantage, I believe. Really impactful. I'm looking forward to reading that book because that's exactly right. He talked about kind of how we are naturally hardwired to constantly keep moving that goalpost for like what is success, right? And then we reach it and then we move the goalpost. And so we're like in that constant pursuit of trying to think that that next thing is going to be the thing that makes us happy. And in the moment, we're missing all the beautiful things that are happening around us. So I thought that was, profoundly, impactful hearing what he had to say. So
yeah, that dude was incredible. It was just, it was like I laughed, I cried, I felt emotions. Like it was crazy.
Right. And it's so cool that he takes a scientific approach to it all. It's, they've actually gone and studied how people react in different ways. And how happiness actually shows up in people's lives. So it wasn't just a, touchy feely, hey, this is, a happy time. It was, hey, we've studied this and this is what the human brain does. So I thought that was super cool.
Yeah. Let's call a tangent alert on us here before we go off into the happiness thing. But all right. So we talked a little bit about like how you can find your why, right? I mean, like, what are some other ways, right? We kind of just said it needs to be emotional, but like when you're really sitting down and you're thinking about your big why, like, I don't want to put you on the spot. We didn't really talk about it. I mean, are you open to sharing your big why?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think like broadly stated, my big why is to have a positive impact on as many people around me as possible. And I think that has been kind of born out of a lot of conversations with my coach where like in the small world, I was like, oh, like I want to have a positive impact on my family. And then he was like, well, like if you got done having a positive impact on your family, what would you do next? And I was like, oh, like
coaching questions.
I would go pour into my community and like people that I could impact there. And he's like, yeah. And then like, what would you do after that? And it just starts to expand that thought process. So I think when you're sitting down thinking about your big why, right? And this is coming from the guy that once did say, my big why was to go retire on the beach. by 40. And it's just, opening your mind up to like, what are the possibilities? And the cool thing we talk about a lot is like, right, you impact your family and then they have people that they connect with in their life. If you did that on a broader scale, and let's say you had a really positive impact on 1,000 people, those 1,000 people also then have the ability to go out and impact people. And it's a really cool like idea to just think about that ripple effect and how many generations you could impact just by helping people. So
yeah, and I love that. And I think what I like about that too is like you can do that right now, right? That can fuel you right now. That doesn't have to be a someday thing necessarily, but like your bigger why is that that the more people you help on a daily basis or weekly, like by the end of your life, right? We don't like to think about it, but by the end of your life, you can now know that you've had a bigger impact. And you know that like the more you achieve, the more people you can help. And like, I think that's great. And I think another thing that we didn't really touch on like big why and purpose is like, it can change, right? It's not like something you have to like, this is what I'm feeling today. And this is what I'm going to feel 20, 30 years from now. Like it can change and it can evolve and it can be different things. So I think that's great.
yeah, man. Would you mind sharing yours? I know you.
No, yeah, no, not at all. I mean, so for me, I have a couple things, but the bigger one, right? When I think about, okay, if nothing else, if I could wake up and I didn't have to work for $1 today and like my family and everybody is taken care of, for me, what really drives me is I would love to go and find communities or even just individuals who don't have I'm big into finances and budgeting and just like really like small steps into achieving a bigger financial goal. So it would just be to connect with those people and give them the information that they don't have access to or nobody is talking to them about, right? So it's like just raising the financial IQ of not even necessarily someone younger, because it really doesn't matter how old you are, but starting there, right? People in high school or college, and just trying to help point them in the right direction and give them access to information and kind of change their brain and the way they think, but essentially help people get on the path to financial freedom from an early age. Because I think I'm on that path now, or I am on that path now. And I just think of what it would be like if somebody did that for me 10 or 15 years ago, where I would be now. And it's a journey, right? It's you are not always ready for it, right? What was it when you're ready, the master appears or something? When the student is ready, the teacher appears or whatever. So, but that's what would drive. That's what drives me. That's what when I think about that day, like that's what I want to do. So
That's really cool, man. And it sounds like you could have a profound impact on a lot of people just by focusing on that. And I think that's the cool thing is once you define what that big why is, it truly is kind of like that beacon of light that guides you. You mentioned earlier, just the simple act of like what gets you up out of bed in the morning, but just what keeps you going. And I think, the more you seek out what that big why looks like for you, you're going to find that purpose and that reason to just, keep striving for being better and better every day.
yeah, I think that's important to note, right? Like if this is your first time ever hearing about a big why or a big purpose, like, and you try and sit down, and you say, okay, what is my purpose? Like, it's not going to, most likely, unless you already know, it's probably not going to show itself to you right away, right? This has been a work in progress for me to kind of get to that point. But if it's just a matter of always putting some brain time to it and saying, what would I do? If you keep asking yourself that question, eventually you will get that emotional connection that makes you feel like kind of nervous and scared, right? Because you're like, wow, this is like really big. It makes me uncomfortable to think about, but also that emotional, like, wow, if I were able to do this, it would just, it would make me feel incredible.
I love it, man. So I think on that, it's a good note to end on here. We have pushed our limits on what is a 10-minute video, but keep an eye out. We want some feedback also. We have been thinking about doing a little bit of a longer format thing, maybe in an audio or YouTube format. So drop a comment below if that's something you think you'd be interested in. And till next time, good luck going out and seeking out your big why.
Later, guys.